Human blood drained from Thomas Foster's face as he watched the Cardassian military officer walk away with his multi-tool, realizing the grave mistake he'd just made by handing advanced human technology to the cold-blooded alien lizards. Thomas's mind raced, knowing that if the Cardassians reverse-engineered the deceptively complex tool, it could spell doom for the vulnerable humans allowed onto the remote space station. As the lone human engineer tasked with repairing a critical power relay, Thomas understood the stakes. If he couldn't retrieve the multi-tool and fix the station's systems, the Cardassians would likely blame the humans, nullifying the fragile cultural exchange and putting human lives at risk. Vega, the Cardassian officer, had seemed friendly enough when he approached Thomas, expressing curiosity about the 35-year-old's high-tech toolkit. But Thomas saw the glint of greed and hunger in Vega's reptilian eyes as the officer examined the multi-tool, a device far more advanced and versatile than anything the Cardassians possessed. Thomas's instincts screamed at him to refuse when Vega asked to keep it, but the engineer's desire to appease his hosts overrode his better judgment. Now, as Thomas watched Vega disappear down the corridor with the pilfered technology, a sense of dread settled in his gut. He knew he had to act fast to protect the humans on the station and prevent the Cardassians from gaining a technological edge that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. But how could one human engineer outsmart an entire alien race on their own turf? Thomas steeled himself for the dangerous task ahead, knowing failure was not an option if humanity hoped to survive this close encounter with the cunning Cardassians. A week passed, with Thomas frantically carrying out his duties, attempting to keep the station running without his precious multi-tool. He was in the middle of repairing a malfunctioning replicator when his comm badge chirped. "Engineer Foster, report to Gul Dukat's office immediately," a gruff Cardassian voice barked. Thomas's heart raced as he made his way to the commander's office, unsure of what to expect. As he entered, Gul Dukat greeted him with a wide, toothy grin that sent shivers down Thomas's spine. "Ah, Engineer Foster, please have a seat." Dukat gestured to a chair in front of his imposing desk. Thomas sat down, his palms sweaty with nervousness. Dukat leaned forward, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. "I have some excellent news, Mr. Foster. Your friend, Officer Vega, has successfully reverse-engineered your multi-tool. In fact, he's already begun mass-producing a Cardassian version which has become quite popular among the crew." Thomas's eyes widened in surprise, his mind reeling at the implications. That's great news, sir," he managed to stammer out. Dukat's smile grew even wider. "Indeed it is, and it's all thanks to you, Mr. Foster. Your willingness to share human technology has not gone unnoticed. As a token of our gratitude, I'm offering you a promotion to a higher-ranking position on the station." Thomas blinked, taken aback by the unexpected offer. I don't know what to say, sir, thank you," he replied, his mind still trying to process the rapid developments. "You've earned it, Mr. Foster," Dukat said, standing up and extending his hand. Thomas shook it, feeling the rough, scaly texture of the Cardassian's skin. "I expect great things from you in your new role." As Thomas left the office, his mind raced with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he was thrilled at the prospect of a promotion and the recognition of his hard work. On the other hand, a sense of unease gnawed at his gut, wondering about the potential consequences of sharing advanced human technology with the Cardassians. Little did Thomas know that just a few decks below him, in the station's weapons research lab, a team of Cardassian scientists were already hard at work integrating the multi-tool's technology into a new type of weapon. Led by the ambitious and ruthless Dr. Zamar, the scientists toiled tirelessly, driven by the potential of creating a handheld device capable of cutting through any material, even the hull of a spacecraft. Dr. Zamar's eyes gleamed with excitement as he examined the latest prototype, its sleek black casing belying the destructive power within. "With this weapon, the Cardassian Union will be unstoppable," he muttered to himself, envisioning the possibilities. As Thomas settled into his new role, blissfully unaware of the dangerous developments taking place beneath his feet, The station hummed with activity, the Cardassians eagerly embracing the newfound technology that would soon change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. 2 months had passed since Thomas's promotion, and he found himself engrossed in the day-to-day maintenance of the Cardassian space station. As he worked on a malfunctioning power conduit, his ears picked up a conversation between 2 Cardassian officers in the adjacent corridor. "Did you hear about the attack on that Klingon ship?" one officer asked, his voice low but excited. "Yeah, I heard we used some new weapon. Cut through their hull like it was nothing," the other replied, a hint of pride in his tone. Thomas froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He strained to hear more details, but the officers had already moved on. Alarm bells rang in his mind as he couldn't shake the feeling that this new weapon was somehow connected to his multi-tool. Driven by a growing sense of unease, Thomas began to investigate. He discreetly accessed the station's computer systems, searching for any information on the new weapon. It didn't take long for him to find what he was looking for: a classified file detailing the development of the Zamar blade, a handheld device capable of slicing through any material. As he delved deeper into the file, Thomas's worst fears were confirmed. The Zamar blade was based on the technology from his multi-tool, reverse-engineered and weaponized by the Cardassians. He knew he had to confront the man behind this dangerous development, Dr. Zamar. Thomas marched into Dr. Zamar's lab, his face flushed with anger and betrayal. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. Dr. Zamar looked up from his work, a smug grin spreading across his scaly features. "Ah, Mr. Foster, I see you've discovered our little project." "You've turned my multi-tool into a weapon of war," Thomas accused, his fists clenched at his sides. "And what a weapon it is," Dr. Zamar exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with pride. "The Zamar blade has already proven its worth in combat against the Klingons. With this device, the Cardassian Union will be unstoppable." Thomas's mind reeled at the implications. He knew he had to report this to Starfleet Command, to warn them of the Cardassians' new weapon. He rushed to his quarters, frantically attempting to send a message, but his communications were blocked. The Cardassians had anticipated his move. Desperate to prevent further misuse of human technology, Thomas knew he had to take matters into his own hands. He needed to steal the blueprints for the Zamar blade and escape the station, but he couldn't do it alone. Thomas sought out Gelora, a Cardassian engineer he had befriended during his time on the station. Gelora had confided in him her growing disillusionment with her people's militaristic ways, and Thomas hoped she would be willing to help. Together they hatched a plan to infiltrate Dr. Zamar's lab and steal the blueprints. Under the guise of a routine maintenance check, Thomas and Gelora managed to slip into the lab undetected. They quickly located the blueprints and made their escape, but not before triggering an alarm. Sirens blared throughout the station as Thomas and Gelora raced towards the shuttle bay, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they rounded the final corner, they skidded to a halt, faced with a sight that made their blood run cold. Vega stood before them, flanked by a team of heavily armed Cardassian soldiers. Their weapons were trained on Thomas and Gelora, their faces twisted with anger and betrayal. "Going somewhere, Mr. Foster?" Vega asked, his voice dripping with venom. Thomas's heart pounded as he faced Vega and the Cardassian soldiers, his grip tightening on the stolen blueprints. Vega's eyes narrowed, his disruptor aimed squarely at Thomas's chest. "Hand over the blueprints, Mr. Foster. You have nowhere to run." Thomas shook his head, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "I can't do that, Vega. You know what this technology could do in the wrong hands. I won't let the Cardassian Union become an unstoppable force." Vega sneered, his finger hovering over the trigger. "You're a fool, Foster. You think you can stop us. We'll hunt you down and take what's ours." In that moment, Thomas knew there was only one way out. He glanced at Gelora, who gave him a subtle nod, her hand inching towards her own weapon. "Now!" Thomas shouted as he dove to the side, firing his phaser at the soldiers. Chaos erupted in the shuttle bay as Gelora joined the fight, her shots finding their marks. Thomas and Gelora made a break for the nearest shuttle, dodging disruptor fire as they ran. But just as they reached the shuttle's entrance, Vega's shot hit Gilora square in the back. Gilora cried out in pain, her legs giving way beneath her. Thomas caught her, dragging her into the shuttle as he fired back at Vega. He slammed his hand on the shuttle controls, sealing the door and activating the engines. As the shuttle lifted off, Vega's shot struck the engines, causing the small craft to shudder violently. Thomas gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the shuttle steady as they cleared the shuttle bay. "Hold on, Gilora," Thomas said, his voice strained as he plotted a course away from the station. But as he looked at the navigation screen, his heart sank. The damage to the engines was too severe. They'd never make it back to Federation space. Gilora groaned, her face pale as she clutched her wound. Thomas knew he had to act fast. He scanned the nearby star systems, searching for a place to land. A small, uninhabited planet caught his eye. It was a risk, but it was their only chance. "I'm setting a course for that planet," Thomas said, his hands flying over the controls. "We're going to crash land, but it's our only option." Gilora nodded weakly, her breath coming in short gasps. Thomas pushed the shuttle to its limits, the planet's surface growing larger in the view screen. The shuttle shook violently as they entered the atmosphere, alarms blaring as the hull temperature spiked. With a bone-jarring impact, the shuttle slammed into the planet's surface, skidding across the rocky terrain before coming to a stop. Thomas, dazed from the crash, forced himself to move. He pulled Gilora from the wreckage, laying her gently on the ground. As he assessed her wounds, Thomas's heart sank. The shot had done too much damage. Without proper medical attention, Gilora wouldn't survive. Tears streamed down Thomas's face as he held Gilora's hand, watching the life fade from her eyes. With a heavy heart, Thomas buried Gilora beneath a pile of stones, marking her grave with a simple cross. He salvaged what he could from the shuttle's wreckage, using his engineering skills to fashion crude tools and weapons. In the days that followed, Thomas struggled to survive on the hostile planet. He foraged for food and water, always keeping a wary eye on the sky. He knew the Cardassians would come looking for him, and he had to be ready. As the sun set on another lonely day, Thomas sat by the fire he'd built, his thoughts turning to the events that had led him here. He'd come to Cardassia with such hope, eager to bridge the gap between their species, but instead, he'd become the catalyst for a new arms race, his actions leading to the death of a friend and his own exile. Thomas looked up at the unfamiliar stars, their light cold and distant. He knew he might never see his home again, never feel the warmth of Earth's sun on his face. But he also knew that he'd done what was right, that he'd prevented the spread of a dangerous technology that could have changed the balance of power in the quadrant. With a sigh, Thomas added more fuel to the fire, its flickering light casting shadows across his weary face. He'd won a small victory, but at what cost? Only time would tell if his sacrifice had been worth it. Months turned into years as Thomas fought to survive on the harsh, unforgiving planet. Each day was a struggle, a battle against the elements and the gnawing loneliness that threatened to consume him. With grim determination, he built a small shelter from the wreckage of the shuttle, salvaging what he could to create a makeshift distress beacon. But the beacon's signal was weak, a feeble cry for help that seemed destined to go unheard in the vast emptiness of space. As time wore on, Thomas's hope of rescue began to fade, replaced by a dull acceptance of his fate. He scavenged for food and water, his once pristine Starfleet uniform now a tattered remnant of his former life. His beard grew long and unkempt, his eyes hollow with the weight of his isolation. But one day, as Thomas was out foraging for edible roots, a glint of metal caught his eye. His heart raced as he watched a Cardassian shuttle descend from the sky, its engines whining as it touched down on the rocky surface. Thomas crept closer, his body tense with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As the shuttle's hatch hissed open, a team of Cardassian soldiers emerged, their weapons at the ready, and leading them, his face twisted with a cruel sneer, was Vega. Thomas's blood ran cold as he realized they must have tracked the distress beacon's signal. With a deep breath, Thomas steeled himself for the confrontation to come. He had spent years preparing for this moment, crafting traps and makeshift weapons from the limited resources available to him. As the Cardassians fanned out, searching the area, Thomas made his move. He sprang from his hiding place, a primal yell tearing from his throat as he launched a barrage of rocks and sharpened sticks at the soldiers. Several fell, caught off guard by the sudden attack. Vega whirled around, his disruptor drawn, but Thomas was already moving, darting between boulders and crevices with a speed born of desperation. The firefight was brutal and bloody, the air thick with the stench of ozone and charred flesh. Thomas felt the searing heat of disruptor blasts as they sizzled past him, singeing his hair and clothes. But he didn't falter, his aim true as he picked off the Cardassians one by one. In the end, only Vega remained, his face contorted with rage and pain. The two adversaries faced each other, both bleeding from multiple wounds. Thomas's vision swam, his body screaming with agony, but he refused to back down. As they lay gasping on the ground, Vega's lips curled into a sneer. "You think you've won, Foster?" he spat, blood flecking his teeth. "The Zamar blade is already out there, in the hands of the Cardassian military. We've been using it to expand our territory, to crush anyone who stands in our way." Thomas's heart sank at the revelation, the full weight of his failure crashing down upon him. Vega laughed, a wet, gurgling sound that turned into a cough. "Your sacrifice was for nothing," he rasped. "The Cardassians will continue to use the weapon, and there's nothing you can do to stop us." With the last of his strength, Thomas dragged himself back to the shuttle, his blood leaving a trail in the dirt. His vision blurred, the edges of his consciousness fraying, but he had one final task to complete. He had built a fail-safe into the distress beacon, a powerful electromagnetic pulse that would fry the shuttle's systems and prevent the Cardassians from ever finding their way back to the planet. As his shaking fingers activated the pulse, Thomas felt a grim sense of satisfaction wash over him. He had done all he could to prevent the spread of the Zamar blade, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. As the world faded to black around him, Thomas's last thoughts were of the Federation, of the precious time he had bought them to prepare for the growing Cardassian threat. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.